Sorry, I'm trying to mess around with my camera right now. We're back. 2 in 1 week. Holy smokes. Am I smoking it right now? You thought you could keep me away from this, but you can't. I breezed through another, 60 pages in a day because I was hooked. Took the old dog for a walk. Let him go swim, and I sat by a tree and read 60 pages. And it was fantastic. It was so good, and I have so much to talk about. And we're going to talk about... Sorry, there's a smudge on my camera. Or no, not really. There was like a smudge on the side of it, so not really in the lens. Just bothered me. Anyway, I'm back. It's 10 o'clock at night right now, which, is normal time. But I want to talk about this, and I have water in a deli container. That's how we're rolling right now. But I have to talk about this because I have to talk about this because I want to talk about it and process. But also I have to talk about it because I have to keep reading in an hour or so whenever we finish this. There's probably enough material here for an hour in all these chapters. But holy smokes, Lord Set coming in. That was probably the key moment of this chapter. Set has jumped into chat. Sorry, I gotta be gross for a second. Sorry about that. Hold on, gotta make sure my mic is working. Okay, we're good. Also, I have a new white balance on my camera. I'm just testing it out because it gets finicky at night. It looks like there's some lights in my eyes right now. I don't know how much I like this white balance. I'm getting all off on tangents right now. Okay, Lord Set comes. Holy guacamole. That was actually crazy. Did not expect that. I thought it was going to be Zane. I was like, oh gosh, this is going to be a weird part of the book if Zane is elected king over Luthadel. But it was actually almost crazier. Lord Set is potentially going to be the king of Luthadel. I don't know how they're going to stop it too. I was trying to think about that on my walk home, and I don't know if I have many solutions, to be completely honest. But that's what this video is for. It's for me to sit here and process through my emotions and feelings, and for you guys to just be a part of that vicariously and live through this vicariously. This is so fun. I'm so excited to keep reading because we're getting on to, I think someone told me I need to do, sorry, I'm all distracted. Like nothing out of the normal for a normal video of mine. Someone told me the chapters, we're going to do live reads for these chapters. And someone told me 47 is one of the best on the Discord. Someone said 47 is one of the best, and 53, 54, 55, and 58. Something like that. I forgot exactly what it was. I got to go back and look. But I'm going to live read, I think, 5 chapters and maybe smush them into a video. I don't know how I'm going to do that legally. I might make it the highlights of my read. So maybe just reacting to certain things or when something comes up. Because I think this text is a little bit different from Lord of the Rings. Copyright issues maybe a little bit different. I don't know. Would Sanderson be cool with that if I just read this on a live stream or recorded me reading it live and then posted that later? I feel like not. Sanderson seems like a cool guy, so maybe. Let me know, because that would be phenomenal. But I definitely am going to do something about my reactions. We'll probably do this for every single book that I read for Sanderson. Oh, there's a beetle flying around my apartment right here. If it flies right, it's going to nail me in the face while I'm recording. I'll probably do this 5 chapters for every book that I do Sanderson. I kind of wish we did Mistborn, because you guys should have seen my reaction. I still remember I was sitting in my bed reading the chapter when Marsh comes back, and I remember turning the page because all the Steel Inquisitors were dead, and I remember turning the page, and there was a big MARSH right there, and my jaw literally dropped. I took a picture of myself because I was sitting there like that, and I was like, hold on, let me get my phone, and then I just snapped a selfie. But anyway, let's go over this chapter because this is some phenom stuff right here. This beetle is gonna go right into my face. Where did it even go? I just hear it buzzing. But okay, let me kick my feet up. Part 3 is titled King. Now, it's a good title for this because we don't know who the king is. I thought it was going to kind of be Ellen taking back his throne, but I don't know. And I'm trying to think of who potentially would be the infiltrator. And I have like 20 different ideas in my head. None of them have legitimate credence. All of them are getting thrown out in every direction. Because there's like confirmations of some and there's non-confirmations of some. And I have a bad feeling at the end of this book when I get there, it's going to be painfully obvious. I'm going to go, why didn't I see that? But anyway, let's go through these chapters. Chapter 28, great chapter. All these chapters were really, really good. They were fun. Finally, one of the things that I wanted, and I'll talk about this as I go on, one of the things that I wanted more than anything else in this entire book was for Vin to trust Sewer enough. And I talked about that in the last video. I just want her to trust Sewer enough so that she can actually that's one of my favorite relationships in this whole book. I just want some information. Me as a reader wants information, and she's starting to do that, and their relationship is actually really starting to flourish and blossom. I think it's really beautiful. So I'm very into that. But anyway, chapter 28. It is the discussion of Ellen getting back into power, and Tindwyl talks women with him, which is a fascinating discussion. But him trying to get back into the power, this is one of the first lines. A lot of my notes now are just dang or wow or holy smokes, because some of this stuff is like, it's like when I'm taking notes like this, I'm like, I want to talk about this so bad, but I know that I'm just gonna like blabber on about it. So sometimes I'm like, oh, I will blabber on about this one, so let me just highlight it and just write dang next to it. So this was one of the things, because Ellen is learning right here. So he goes, see reason, Ellen. Ham said with a nod. I will not be an exception to my own laws, Ellen said. Don't be a fool, Tindwyl said. You should, Tindwyl, Ellen said. Respond to my ideas as you wish, but do not call me a fool again. I will not be belittled because I express my opinion. Tindwyl paused, mouth partially open, then she pressed her lips together and took her seat. Vin felt a quiet surge of satisfaction. You trained him, Tindwyl, she thought with a smile. Can you really complain if he stands up to you? That was a great section. That reminded me in the movie Dune when he uses the voice on the Bene Gesserit, like whatever her name is, the mother. I was going to say the Mother Talzin, but that's Star Wars. The Reverend Mother. That was a really cool scene in Dune. This felt like that. Tindwyl's raising her up. Although I love Tindwyl. Tindwyl is one of my favorite characters too. I have so many favorite characters in this. I'm just skeptical of everyone in the crew though. You know who I'm maybe most skeptical is the infiltrator, but I don't think he is Clubs. I don't know why, but that name just keeps rolling around in my head as being like, where did he go? I thought that was going to be Doxson initially, and then midway through this part, it kind of showed that Doxson isn't. At least Vin trusts him. Sewer doesn't, so maybe that's the indication. But like, I think the whole thing was too standard. I think what Sanderson was trying to do is lead me to believe that Doxson is the infiltrator. And so when we got to this chapter and Vin's like, no, I actually trust him. He knows this information, and how would he know this information? Then Sewer was like, oh no, we obtain information like that. We torture people for this information. Then I'm going, this whole thing seems to be leading me to believe it's Doxson. Then I have my trust revoked and it's back and forth. But you know who's been really under the radar is Clubs. I would be really bummed if Clubs was, because I kind of like Clubs. Anyway, Ellen is at a weird crossroad right now, because he's becoming his own man and he's like learning how to become a king, but he's not king, and he makes some severe mistakes and he underestimates things a lot. Like, I think he does know how to manipulate his father, but I don't think he knows how to really rule yet, or like strategic warfare. Like, I just watched, one of my buddies came over and we're watching Game of Thrones for the first time. Or he is watching Game of Thrones. I watched it. This is my second time watching it. And I'm going to start reading those books pretty soon. But we just got to the episode of Lord Baelish throwing the lady down the moon door. And Peter Baelish is one of the most interesting characters. He's terrible in this series, and I hate him. But he does whatever he can for power, and he is playing chess. He is playing a complicated game of chess. A lot of these other people, like Ned Stark, was playing checkers. Ned Stark was playing like tic-tac-toe. Ned Stark was not. He was one of the greatest people. I love him with everything in me. Did not know how to play the Game of Thrones. Peter Baelish does know how to play the Game of Thrones. Elend is like at this part right now where he doesn't really know. He knows some strategy, but he knows like crafting laws. He doesn't necessarily know how to rule yet, or doesn't know warfare. But no one really, I think, knows warfare in this whole group. Like, if I'm trying to think through these things, I'm like, maybe Doxson. But Doxson is like, he seems obsessed with something else. He seems like very distracted right now. Ham's not a simple-minded guy, but like, I think when it comes to warfare, he's just a brute. I think that's what like his allomancy almost trains him up to be. He's just strong, so he feels like a Hulk character, even though he's into philosophy. I almost think that's like a guise for Sanderson to like throw that in there, but like he seems very simple-minded still. Like he doesn't do all the strategies of war. He's just a brute. I don't think that's necessarily the case, but it's kind of my reading on him right now. Breeze is really complicated, but no one trusts Breeze. So I don't think he could lead an army very well, which he did in the first book, and he kind of did it successfully. So I don't know. Maybe he could. But Elend has a lot to learn. I feel like if he had a year, he would have been okay. He would have like been a good king. Still a lot to learn, and like I still have that line in my head from the first book about how, and someone made a comment about in the last video about it too, what the line exactly was and how it's really, really a valid statement. How every bit of conversation is kind of manipulation, and you're like playing your hands and you're playing your cards at certain points. Certainly lower the camera. I'm lowering up my feet. That didn't work great, but that's good enough. Like how everything is kind of manipulation. And I keep thinking about that. That's just such an interesting line for the entire series. I might like write an essay on that or something like that. But it just feels like that here. If you see, it seems like everyone is playing a game, and they're all trying to, I was going to say they're all trying to get power, but they're not. Elend does not seem like he's interested in power. Elend, he has a good strategy. He's setting up like a policy governance kind of style of government, like a legislature kind of government. And the people are not ready for that. They're ready for someone like Kelsier or someone like Vin to like take over. Vin would never want that. Vin probably is never going to be in that position. But Vin seems to have her mind a little bit straighter in this section. Not that she like has her identity straightened, but she at least seems like she knows that Zane is bad news. But I'm still nervous for this situation. I still feel like she's going to like still fall in love with him in some way. But anyway, the text goes on. And it says, but Elend, to him, ruling the central dominance wasn't about fame or glory. For the first time, completely and honestly, she decided something. Elend was a far better king than Kelsier would have ever been. And then this is great. I am not certain what I think of this experience, mistress, a voice whispered beside her. Vin paused. Looking down, she realized that she had begun idly scratching Orsura's ears. I love it. This is one thing that I love in writing. J.R. Tolkien does this all the time, but he puts a really serious moment when like someone has a very, very like good revelation of like, oh my gosh, this person is it. And then all of a sudden you throw like a really funny moment of levity down there. And Sanderson does that really well here. Like making Vin have this realization that Kelsier is, or Elend is a better king than Kelsier would ever be, because he's willing to like sacrifice even himself for this, which Kelsier kind of did that, but he did it in like a different way. He did it for like a cause. Elend is doing this for like his government. He's willing to like step aside. He doesn't seem like he's after power. He seems like he is after the good of people, but it still seems like he, like, I don't know. This is going to sound bad because they had a discussion about this or later on in this book, but it seems like the people right now need some kind of transitional government where Elend is in power for like 5 years, just a structured government. He cannot be supplanted. He cannot be deposed. He needs to be in power for 5 years to set up this transition to like a legislature and like a represented government. I think that's probably the way to go, because right now they're in so much transition, and there's a really fascinating section later that I want to read about how it talks. I think it was talking, I forgot who exactly was where this was, but they were talking about how there would be like riots and revolutions, and all of a sudden they'd go over there and the people would be in chaos again because they'd want to go back to their former masters. Gosh, I keep burping. Excuse me. So yeah, that was kind of interesting. My note here. Okay, so we have this. This was really interesting, and we learn about this later too. But it says, "How sure are you about this?" "I've raised a number of daughters, Your Majesty," Tyndall said. "I understand the things of which I speak." "Daughters?" Ellen asked. "You have children?" "Of course. The terracemen he'd known were eunuchs like Sazid." The same couldn't be true for a woman of like Tyndall, of course, but he assumed that the Lord Ruler's breeding programs would have affected her somehow. Which you learn later that they kind of snuck her into the breeding programs, which is really interesting. That was a great job of sneaking her into breeding programs. But it also makes me realize how many of these other people are. Do we know anybody else who is not necessarily like a closeted, because I don't think they're like a closeted species, but maybe because Tyndall was having kids, how were they keeping them safe? Because did the Lord Ruler, it seemed, okay, sorry, I'm all off. I can't speak. It seemed like the Lord Ruler knew or did not know that Tyndall was a terrace woman. And so it appears that the terrace people were very happy when she was part of this, not for like her own benefit, but she got to sacrifice for her people and produce more of these keepers or terrace people. And so it seems like they didn't know what was happening or what they were doing. And so are there a bunch of little terrace babies running around? Do we know any of these people? How long was she producing children? I don't know any answers to those questions. Are you able to recognize a terrace person if like you were in a crowd of a bunch of people? Maybe Vin could, because she can hear the pulsings, but I don't know if anybody else could, other than just how they dress and their place in society. Do they have to? They don't seem like they have to snap. They're not, their allometric prowlers aren't like that. Sorry, I'm picking dead skin off my hand right here. That's gross. You don't need to see that. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I feel like we might have gotten answers on that some of that before, but maybe I wasn't paying attention close enough. And one thing that you guys are phenomenal at is like letting me know certain things that I might have forgotten without spoilers. Like, things that I forgot in the past, which I love so much. Like reading this with you guys is so much fun because you guys help me so much. The end of this chapter says, a really interesting section too. Ultimately, you may have no choice, Tyndall said. It is a question most kings face eventually, I fear. No, Ellen said. There's no reason I can't love both Vin and protect my people. I've studied too many hypothetical dilemmas to be caught in a trap like that. Tyndall shrugged, standing. Believe as you wish, Your Majesty. I already see a dilemma, and I find it not at all hypothetical. She bowed her head in slight deference, and then withdrew from the room, leaving him with his book. I think in this little section, my note at the end is I think that Ellen would actually wildly choose government over Vin. And this is what might kick Vin out of like her. This is going to sound weird again, but like she almost feels bound to love Ellen. Like this whole thing is like for them to have freedom to be able to love each other. But I think both of them are going to realize quickly toward the end of this that they are actually better apart than they are together. And maybe Ellen is going to go out and set up this government, and he's going to realize that, this is like almost a distraction. And maybe Vin is going to realize that too, because she just wants to go be an Allomancer, be a Mistborn, and just go run amok. She doesn't know who she is yet. She has no idea. I'm curious who she's going to find out she is at the end of this book. The Hero of Ages? Maybe. We'll talk about that. That's really interesting. But next chapter 29. My summary for this one is Vin and Orsur talk. Finally, we're getting more information here. My top note here is a lot of problems would be solved if Vin had conversations with people, and I'll talk about that in a second with like where exactly it is. But the inscription, or like the prescript for this chapter, it says there were other proofs to connect Alendi to the hero of ages, smaller things that only one trained in the lore of anticipation would have noticed. The birthmark on his arm. Why is that a sign? The way his hair turned gray when he was barely 20 and 5 years of age. The way he spoke, the way he treated people, and the way he ruled, he simply seemed to fit. Why is a birthmark on the arm a sign that you are the hero of ages? Does Vin have any birthmarks? That seems that I read that and I was like, huh? What does that mean? I mean, I read like every other page I'm doing that. I'm going, oh, what does that mean? That one was just strange to me. The hero of ages. So this is something that I don't know how to talk about this. I think Brandon Sanderson, he's a Mormon, so I think he believes in something within like the theological world of like prophecies as having something called near and far fulfillments. Whereas I think you look at some of the religious texts and you see this, that like a lot of prophetic literature, there's like an initial prophecy that happens, and there's like an initial fulfillment of that prophecy, and then later on it's going to be fulfilled even greater. I think that's what this book is maybe getting at a little bit. Like there was maybe an initial fulfillment of the prophecy, but I feel like we are in the time right now when this prophecy is going to be fulfilled. And it feels like I am so mistrusting of information in this book. Like if a character in the book says I am this, or I believe this, or I trust this person, I don't. I go the opposite way. I'm like, no, they're clearly leading me astray here, which sometimes can take away my joy of the readings here. But there's one section, Vin just seems kind of convinced that she's the hero of ages. Now initially I was like, no, she probably isn't, because she's so convinced that she is. It has to be someone else. But the more I look into this, more I think this might be right, because it's like soft. She's like not sure yet. So I think she's just going to grow into this role and become the hero of ages. But I don't know. I don't know who else could be. I don't know if there's any other indication of someone who could potentially be the hero of ages. Do we know any other Mistborn? The only other Mistborn that we know of right now is Zane. And potentially Lord Set. Because Vin seems very convinced that Set is a Mistborn, because he's a cripple, and that would be a great disguise. He's like doing like the prestige routine over there with magic, like faking his injuries. So I don't know. This is what we have. That cannot be healthy, Mistress Orster. You sleep barely 3 or 4 hours a day. No, nobody, Mistborn or man or Kandra, can survive on a schedule like that for long. I just wrote, there are some people who can, which is a dumb little note, but I am falling in love with Orsur. I think I mentioned this before, but I think Orsur is becoming one of my favorite characters, because he's slowly, like his walls are slowly coming down. And it's interesting too, because Vin's walls are very, very high up, but her walls are slowly coming down because she's trusting Orsur and she's like treating him kindly. And so they have this really unique and cool bond that I think is one of the more interesting in the book. Like the first book, I was really interested in the bond that she had with Sazid. Like that was the most fascinating one. And I still think Sazid is maybe one of my favorite characters, but I think Orsur is just so interesting. So like non-personality like in the first book, and then all of a sudden brimming with personality. Like still very much like a servant, does his job, fulfills his contract, but very cheeky, snarky, silly at times, like very dry sense of humor. I really love him. It's all right, just speak your mind. Well, Mistress, Orsur said, raising his head off his paws. I do not like this Zane. What do you know of him? Nothing more than you, Orasura admitted. But most Kandra are very good judges of character. When you practice imitation for as long as I have, you learn to see the hearts of men. What I have seen of Zane is worrying. He seems too pleased with himself. He seems too deliberate in the way he has befriended you. He makes me uncomfortable. Vin sat on the ledge, legs parted, hands before her, with palms down, resting on the cool stone. He might be right. But Orasur hadn't flown with Zane, hadn't sparred in the mists. Through no fault of his own, Orasur was like Ellen, not an Allomancer. Neither of them could understand that it was what it was to soar on a push of steel, to flare tin and experience the sudden shock of 5 heightened senses. They couldn't know. They couldn't understand. Venus has this mentality of oh, no one understands me, no one knows me, which in real life sometimes it's tiresome. You're teenagers have that. Well, she kind of is a teenager still. She's still in this phase of, she was kind of abused, so she's stuck in this little teenage version of herself. So she's able to experience all these emotions. I'm not going to take that away from her, but sometimes I think obviously in this book that she's going to kind of grow up and learn get her identity, and I think that's what she's going to lean into, which might be the hero of ages. She might become the hero of ages and save the realm from the mist, and maybe she's going to become the ruler because of this at the end. And Elend might just try to set up a better government. Maybe they're going to be at odds with each other and they're going to just realize that they have to battle each other. What a twist that would be. I don't think that's going to happen, but you never know. And then finally at the end of this chapter, I was so happy when I read this at the end of this chapter. She goes, Lord Ruler Vintha. Actually, you know what? I take it back. I said that Lord Set was the most interesting part of this chapter, but this is, or this section, but this is. Lord Ruler Vintha, struck by a sudden insight. She'd been working on this problem for so long. It had begun to frustrate her. And now, when she'd been ignoring it, the answer had come to her, as if her subconscious mind had still been picking it apart. Mistress, Orasur asked, is everything all right? Vin opened her mouth slightly, cocking her head. I think I just realized what the deepness was. My note here is, about time. I was so happy. And then the next chapter, chapter 30, they discuss what the deepness is. Such a good chapter. So good. And they have a back and forth. Sazid is kind of hesitant of some of her answers. And I do have to say, I had a note before I read any of this in my book, in page numbers? Oh yeah, 272. I said, ... Is Vin the hero of ages? And then 2 pages later, she makes that suggestion. She goes, and now the mists have started to kill people. They've started coming during the day. It's like events are repeating, so maybe that means that the hero of ages will have to come again. She glanced back at him, looking a bit embarrassed. Hasazid thought, sensing her implication. She saw things in the mist. The previous hero of ages had the same things. I'm not certain that is a valid statement, Lady Vin. Which I think, okay, so because I'm thinking this, I think this is actually a good indication of a good writer. Brandon Sanderson gives you this sense, he's very good at surprises. The Marsh thing was a huge surprise. The Set thing was a huge surprise for me. But he also does things where he makes you feel like you're smart as a reader, which is just such a good author strategy. I want to feel smart and like I'm figuring out this puzzle. And so, this little moment here where I wrote, ... Is Vin actually the hero of ages? And 2 pages later, she's actually suggesting the same, is good writing, because under the current of everything that Vin is doing, I think she fully believes that she's the hero of ages. Excuse me. And one of my other note here is the prophecy not yet fulfilled, which maybe I should have known that earlier, that the prophecy is not really fulfilled, but again, I think that's a good bit of writing there. I'm talking more about his writing. There's another thing that Sazid is kind of hung up on, which with this idea, and this keeps coming back to me as well. It says, and as the one who found Alendi, however, I became someone important. Ooh, sorry. Hopefully that wasn't too loud. I became someone important, foremost among the world bringers. And then later on, but I do, and so I did not. but I do so now. Let it be known that I, Quan, world bringer of Terrace, am a fraud. Because there was a, he says, sorry, I should have read this whole thing just in one go. There was a place for me in the lore of anticipation. I thought myself the announcer, the prophet foretold to discover the hero of ages. Renouncing Alendi then would have been to renounce my new position, my acceptance by the others. And so I did not. But I do so now. Let it be known that I, Quan, worldbringer of Terrace, am a fraud. Sazid closed his eyes. Worldbringer. The term was known to him. The Order of Keepers had been founded upon memories and hopes from Terrace legends. The Worldbringers had been teachers, ferrochemists who had traveled lands bearing knowledge. They had been a prime inspiration for the secret Order of Keepers. And now he had a document made by a Worldbringer's own hands. And this whole document is so fascinating. I hope we get more information into this. But the whole idea of being a Worldbringer, this makes me think to some extent like this world is like very cyclical. Like there's terrible things that happen in this world. Maybe they're going to get slaughtered by the mist. Everyone is going to get killed, like Orsu was talking about before. And then they repopulate this place. And then there's people who are like terrorist people who end up hiding in the mountains. And now they come out and they bring the new world again. And then the mist kind of does the same thing. So it feels like maybe this is like a cyclical kind of thing. Because like I'm like, where are these people coming from? Like what other realms exist? I want like a large map of everything in this. Not just in, like in the beginning we have the map of all the dominances, but I'm like, where are they coming from over these mountains? Like this is the map that we have. I want to know the borders of the map. I want to expand this map more. What's going on over the mountains over there? What's going on over the crescent dominance or the terrace dominance? Or in the coastlands? There's a lot of interesting stuff that's going on. Again, good information here about the deepness, about how it's, I feel like I called that, about how it seems like it's the fog, although in my head, part of me thinks that it's too obvious, so it can't be the fog. But I think it definitely is the fog. The fog definitely seems like the deepness right now. Vin is seeing things in the deepness. She might be the hero of ages, or she might be like the announcer of the hero of ages, maybe. And I think she's piecing things together correctly. But my question is the fog, the mist, just going to keep getting more and more aggressive? And then what is it about the mist that she can use to her own elementic powers? That's maybe the question I'm most interested in at the moment. Like when she was able to defeat the Lord Ruler, she was able to use the mist almost like whatever was in the mist. So is she going to be able to do that again? Is she going to become like a mist wraith? Is she going to become like this misty creature? Maybe Alendi is this mist creature right now. How did the Lord Ruler keep the mist at bay? I need to just sit in a dark room and think about that question for an hour and come up with an answer. I don't know. I think it has to do with the ash mounts. Maybe he kept the ash mounts more active. But in the beginning of this book, it says the ash mounts were more active. They were spouting more ash. Right? That's like one of the first lines in this book. Hold on. Hold on. I gotta piece this together. The ash mounts had been particularly active lately. In my note, and that actually was, is this the deepness? Has to be connected with the deepness in some way, no? Was the Lord Ruler keeping the ash mounts not active to some degree, therefore keeping the mist? Why is there mist during ash mounts though? Is that a thing? I don't know much about the volcanic activity. How do you stop volcanic activity? It has to do with that to some degree. That's my answer right now. Probably not a right answer, but Vin didn't respond. Oh dear, Sazid thought, sighing to himself. I've bored her. I really do need to be more careful, watching my vocabulary and my language. One would think that after all the travels among the sky I would have learned. Sazid? Vin said, sounding thoughtful. What if we're looking at it wrong? What if these random deaths in the mist aren't the problem at all? What do you mean, Lady Vin? She sat quietly for a moment, one foot tapping back idly against the chair's back cushion. She finally looked up, meeting his eyes. What would happen if the mists came during the day permanently? So I think she's piecing it together here. And then we have this. These are quotes from the logbook, Finn said. She pointed at a paragraph. Here the Lord Ruler talks about how armies were useless against the deepness. At first I thought this meant that the armies had been able to defeat it, or hadn't been able to defeat it. But looking at the wording, he says, the swords of my armies are useless. What's more useless than trying to swing a sword at mist? She pointed to another paragraph. It left destruction in its wake, right? Countless thousands died because of it, but he never says that the deepness actually attacked them. He says that they died because of it. Maybe we've been looking at this the wrong way all along. These people weren't crushed or eaten. They starved to death because their land was slowly being swallowed by the mists. Again, I think she is piecing things together correctly. Sazid is like supposed to be the skeptic here, but I don't think Sazid's answers are that great. And I know it's Sazid, but it's Sazid forever in my head. He's Sazid to me. And then this. She pointed at another section of notes. Do you recognize these paragraphs? It isn't a shadow. This dark thing that follows me, the thing that only I can see, it isn't really a shadow. It's blackish and translucent, but it doesn't have a shadow-like outline. It's insubstantial, wispy and formless, like it's made out of a dark fog, or mist perhaps. Yes, Lady Vin, Sazid said. The hero saw a creature following him. It attacked one of his companions, I think. Vin looked in his eyes. I've seen it, Sazid. He felt a chill. It's out there, she said, every night in the mist, watching me. I can feel it with Alamancy. And if I get close enough, I can see it. As if it formed from the mist itself. Insubstantial, yet somehow still there. Chilling. It is absolutely chilling here. Like, I don't know what this could be. Part of me thinks, like, did Alendi take the form of the mist? Is the mist really maybe like a good thing, just trying to get revenge on people? But no, like the mist is taking out ska, just random ska people. That's not good. I don't like that. How do they keep the mist at bay? I'm gonna just pine over these questions for another, 300 pages? And then it says, this is the breeding stuff. Yes, Lady Vin. You see, Tyndall spent most of her years as a terrace mother, then hesitated, hand in pocket, looking surprised. You mean she was a breeder? Says he nodded. The Lord Ruler's breeding programs included selecting a few special individuals to use for birthing new children, with the goal being to breed Feruchemi out of the population. I missed that, actually. Tyndall had, at last count, birthed over 20 children. So how by breeding someone who is a feruchemist do you breed them out of population? Was this just an oversight by the Lord Ruler? Each with a different father. Tyndall had her first child when she was 14 and spent her entire life being taken repeatedly by strange men until she became pregnant. And because of the fertility drugs the breeding masters forced upon her, she often bore twins or triplets. That is tragic. But that part is confusing me. How, if you're doing a breeding program, again, this is my question. Did the Lord Ruler know that she was a terrace woman? He had to have. I don't know, actually. How do you know? How? And if you know, how do you then seek to breed them out by breeding them? I don't know genetics. Any geneticists here? That seems weird. That seems like an oversight. That seems like he doesn't know what he's doing. Maybe he really does know what he's doing and he was trying to maybe that's what kept the deepness away. That would be terrible. I don't think that's the answer. Chapter 31. Phylon nominates Set. But Ellen was smart in this chapter. He did good. One of my first notes. Because not king anymore, Phylon thought with a smile. Merely plain old Ellen Venture. It was a poor name, not as good as Phylon's own. Of course, he had been Lynn until a year and a half ago. Lynn. Did we know a Lynn in Mistborn? I don't think so, but maybe. I want to punch this guy in the face so hard. Phylan Frando was what he had dubbed himself after the collapse. It delighted him to no end that others had taken to calling him the name without pause. But why should he have a grand name, a lord's name? Was Phylan not as good as any of the noblemen, sitting aloofly in their palaces or in their places? So, first of all, my question is like, where did this guy come from? Did we know him before? He's shady. I don't like him, but he's rich. So he's going to pose a problem. And then all of a sudden, my other note he looks down because he's like going to nominate this person and he's thinking in his head. And all of a sudden, you don't know who this person is yet, but they're seated and he's like, okay, now I can do this. And then you figure out that was set, which is crazy. We have here, I had just a few random things. It says, pity, Phylan thought, smiling. Well, we'd best be seated. I see that young Venture isn't here, though. Yes, Penrod said, frowning. He's been most difficult to convince to vote against Venture. He had something of a fondness for the boy. He had come around in the end. They all had. This made me think, is Phylan, can he soothe? Is he an allomancer in some way? Is he a mystic? Can he soothe people and convince people of certain things? I don't think so. But not off the table. I'm convinced more people can become mystics if they really wanted to. Just have a traumatic event happen in your life and then just snap. That's all it takes. That probably sounds terrible. But yeah, there, a chapter is good when I actually don't have notes in it, because you know that I was sitting there and I was just going like this. Not even like ready to take a note, because I don't have a lot of notes in this chapter, but the stuff that's happening in this chapter are, I think Elend is smart in this chapter. He does something really, really genius that they're all kind of like, they're all shocked on. This is what he says. Sorry, 1 second. Got a text, an important text. So this is like his whole thing. He's not touting himself or like saying that, you should regret not electing me, which I like. He's not like a child. He's not like having a tirade here. But he says, this is what the book says right here. Bree shook his head appreciatively. Not only did Ellen not have to nominate himself, which would make him look desperate, but now everyone in the assembly thinks the man that they respect, the man that they would probably choose as king, would rather have Ellen hold the title. Brilliant. Penrod sat, and the room remained quiet. Vince suspected that he had also made the nomination so that he wouldn't go uncontested to the throne. The entire assembly probably thought that Ellen deserved a chance to reclaim the palace, or his place. Penrod was simply the one who was honorable enough to voice his feeling. At this moment, I was like, dang, Ellen is in control of this situation. But this is why, like, some people are playing chess, some people are playing checkers, some people are playing tic-tac-toe, some people are playing it, Go. There's different skill keys to power. I don't have the mind to be able to do this. Like, if I was in Game of Thrones, or if I was in this realm right now, I'd be a ska worker, be a happy, ska stone worker, or a little, just working in the fields. Just give me a simple life like that. Having to think politically about certain things like this seems so exhausting. Like, he overplayed Penrod, but then he gets overplayed by Phylan here. And then Set overplays everyone. Set is kind of using Phylan, but at the same time not. Phylan seems like he's in control of himself. And he has his own motives, which is essentially to make money. There were gross things at the end of that drink. That was gross. Sorry, TMI. And then the end. How did Lord Set get in? That is a question that I have. Oh dear, Bree said. It's actually him. Vin asked incredulously as the whispers began in the audience. Breeze nodded. Oh, that's him. Lord Set himself. He eyed her. I think we might be in trouble. crazy. Chapter 32 is set essentially like giving his demands, saying his piece. It's a good chapter. It's wild though. Again, I don't have a ton of notes in this chapter, but I do have some at the end. And this is an interesting section. It says Penrod nodded to Elend, then turned and joined a few of the noblemen who were leaving. Elend stood quietly for a moment, recalling a passage from Ytev's book, Studies in Revolution. This is what I was talking about before, and this is a fascinating section. Excuse me. We have seen a curious phenomenon associated with rebel groups that break off from the final empire and attempt to seek autonomy. In almost all cases, the Lord Ruler didn't need to send his armies to reconquer the rebels. By the time his agents arrived, the groups had overthrown themselves. It seems that the rebels found the chaos of transition more difficult to accept than the tyranny they had known before. They joyfully welcomed it back, even oppressive authority, for it was less painful to them than uncertainty. That's a great line. This is one of my not favorite. I sound weird by saying it's my favorite thing to study, but I think it's really interesting and fascinating to study through things in human history that were terrible things that happened in human history, like governmental changes. Like I read one of my favorite books of all time is the Poisonwood Bible. I think it's one of the best books ever written. I love it so much. And in that book is essentially the change from becoming the Belgian Congo to the Independent Republic of Congo to the French Congo to Zaire. It's like a huge transition for this book. And they're essentially covering one transition, but they're talking about one family and how like as soon as the transition happens, it's like one nation just gets up and leaves, and they just leave people there, and there's absolute chaos that happens. It's like you kill the Lord Ruler, there's absolute chaos that happens in this realm. And at the same time, people don't love that. They don't want to live in the chaos. They need structure, and the only structure that they know in their life is to go back to how things were. And this is what people want right now, which is a really tragic. Like they fought so hard to get this freedom, and now they're losing it, which is tragic. And I don't know what the solution is. Actually, the solution is just to hold out for a little bit longer. Like, I'm curious. I'm not that curious. I probably wouldn't read a book like this, but I'm curious who in human history has written a book on like transitional political things. Like, I guess every nation was founded in some way because of like transitional politics. I don't know though. I think it's just, I don't know. I think it's a fascinating line for here. And it's like just this stuff makes me wonder what the other series and how they will connect to this book will be. Like, I can't help think. Excuse me. 10:45. We're going to go on for 48 minutes. Not bad. I can't help but think, like I know, I always forget the titles of these books. I was going to say Warbringer. I don't think it's Warbringer. The 5 books that he just made. You guys will know. Fill in the details for fill in the gaps for me. I'm very curious what those are about and how they connect to this world. And if we're going to know certain characters from this world into that one. Part of me thinks like none of this in Mistborn is going to work. And it's going to be all chaos. And those books are essentially going to be about different dominances ruling and fighting against each other or something like that. But I don't know. This world is getting complicated. I kind of love it. And we barely are scratching the surface, which I love even more. Vin says quietly, well, we know he's Mistborn. Ellen turned toward her. You sense allomancy from him? Vin shook her head. No. Then how do you know? Well, look at him, Vin said with a wave of her hand. He acts like he can't walk. That has to be covering up something. What would be more innocent than a cripple? Can you think of a better way to hide the fact that you're a Mistborn? My dear, Vin, Breeze said. Zed has been crippled since childbirth. When a disease rendered his legs useless. He's not Mistborn. Vin raised an eyebrow. That has to be one of the best cover stories I've ever heard. Breeze rolled his eyes, but Ellen smiled. And then they just pass over that line. Which has me thinking that he is. maybe not a mistborn. He's either a misting or something. Ferrochemistry, Mistwraith. I don't know. He's something. Kandra doesn't seem normal. What is this disease that crippled him from birth? Would love to know that. I don't know if that's important, but it seems important that he's a cripple to some degree. Why did he get crippled? Just don't know. Okay, the last chapter in this. Chapter 33. Before I end, then I'll publish this video, and then I will literally go take my dog for a quick poo. And then I'm going to sit here and read another chapter. Chapter 34. I'm so pumped before I go to bed. It's going to be my dessert before I go to bed. Chapter 33. Not a ton happens in chapter 33. Not like, the most scintillating chapter. Essentially, like, there's a few discussions that happened. She has a discussion with Dox. And she has a discussion with Orsur about who the imposter is. Which, I don't know who it is. Again, more and more questions. I feel like these videos aren't even that useful because it's like not me theorizing on things. Well, it is me theorizing and just throwing crap at a, dartboard and seeing what sticks. But I wish I had more theories. Actually, I don't know if I wish that. My mind is spinning already. I want more answers. That's what I want. I want to discuss these things. And I think I'm going to get that pretty soon. I think the Sanderlanche, not necessarily is coming. Maybe I'm probably 100-ish pages away from the Sanderlanche. I'm dead halfway, actually. I cannot wait. I cannot wait to keep reading. Love this. And what of the night, over a year gone, when she confronted the Lord Ruler? That night when somehow she'd drawn the mists into herself, burning them as if they were metal. She has a discussion with Orsur. This right here. Sorry, I should just read this. What is it your people have prophecies about anyway? I don't think you want to know, mistress. Vin smiled. They talk about overthrowing us, don't they? Orsur sat down, and she could almost see a flush on his canine face. My people have dealt with the contract for a great long time, mistress. I know it is difficult for you to understand why we would live under this burden, but we find it necessary. And we do dream of a day when it may not be. When all the humans are subjected to you? Vin asked. Orsur looked away. When they're all dead. Oh my god. Wow. The prophecies are not literal, mistress, Orsur said. They're metaphors, expressions of hope. Or at least, that is how I have always seen them. Perhaps your terrorist prophecies are the same, expressions of a belief that if the people were in danger, the gods would send a hero to protect them. In this case, the vagueness would be intentional and irrational. Prophecies were never the prophecies were never meant to mean someone specific, but more to speak of a general feeling, a general hope. If prophecies weren't specific, why could only she sense the drumming beats? I don't think she's going to be the only one that senses the drumming beats. I don't want her to talk to Zane about this because Zane is out of his mind. I don't know if Sazid could even sense this. We need another Mistborn. We need a healthy Mistborn for Vin to have conversations with. That's what we need. And then Sazid, or Vin, Sazid, or Orsur, and this healthy Mistborn could have discussions all day long, and we could figure everything out. I feel like someone's going to be a Mistborn in this. That's another theory that I have. There's a Mistborn that's just lurking somewhere. We don't know this person's a Mistborn yet. I don't know who it is. But I feel like we know. I feel like there is. Not that we know. I feel like there's going to be. Because, I don't know. This is an interesting section because it's like, I am kind of with Orsur here. Like this idea that these prophecies are given almost to just give people hope. And things are going to be okay. Things are going to get better. And Vin's like, well, I would believe that they're generic, but I feel she keeps sensing these thumps and no one else is. And was the Hero of Ages able to do that? Was anybody else? Was the Lord Ruler able to do that? Lord Ruler seems like he was able to do that because the Lord Ruler was able to stop the deepness, but maybe that's actually not the deepness. Maybe this is our misdirect. Guys, I don't know. Oh. The Kandra tend to think well of the Colossus mistress. This is an interesting section. Orsur said, there is a bond between us. We both understand what it is to be slaves. We are both outsiders to the culture of the final empire. We both... He broke off. What? Vin asked. Might I speak no further? Orsur asked. I have said too much already. Then she goes, we all need secrets. There's always another secret. There's always something around the corner. I feel like every chapter that I read, I'm going to get like a new little bit of information. I really feel like I am walking, like this like book is a box. Every chapter is like a wall. And then as soon as I get to the end of the chapter, it's like another little wall that I get to peek behind and see if something's there. Really good writing that way. All my notes about Doxson. In the beginning, I just said, when she's initially talking to him, I said, it's too obvious that he is the infiltrator. It just seems too obvious. He's just different. Vin is talking about how this person is just like different from what they were. But then Vin has a heart-to-heart conversation with him. And she realizes, actually, no, he seems to know, like he has guilt. She saw the death of his laughter. She saw the guilt, the murders. This man is no imposter, she says. I can find little joy in this government, Vin, Doxson said quietly, because I know what we did to create it. So he seems to know things, and the Kandra must have done an incredible job. This is the Kandra of replicating him and torturing him. I don't think he's the Kandra. I think I almost think everyone in Vin's crew isn't the infiltrator. Maybe Clubs. Clubs might be my leading suggestion right now. I hope it's not Clubs. Maybe Breeze, but I don't think it's Breeze. Breeze seems to be checked out, but maybe there's something weird about Breeze that we just don't know yet. I hope it's not Ham. I really like Ham. Doxson, maybe. I don't think Doxson. I think Doxson might be the clearest right now. But I just kept going back and forth. And then one of my questions at the very end, which was a ridiculous one, which I do not believe, but I'm just going to throw this out there because I wrote a note about this. My note says, is Orsur the imposter? Can a Kandra take over? Would a Kandra kill another Kandra in order to get information? No chance. No chance that would happen. They're devoted to the contract. They're not that devoted to one single person. Although, if there was one person who would be devoted to a person, it is Orsur devoted to Vin. Unless whoever the Kandra is that was devoted to this other person really came to love this other person. I don't think that's really the case. Because I think it takes kindness and love, and I don't know if Set has that. He seems just to desire power. But I don't know. The last little line of this chapter. Vin sat back in the shadows. He'd spoken to the guards. So he hadn't snuck out of the palace yet. And yet, she recognized the stooped posture, the ancient movements. He'd been nervous about something. That's him, she thought, the spy. But now, what should she do about it? And she's talking about Demu, which is a bummer because in the first book, I loved him because he was one of the smart people that stood behind. So I would be bummed if he was killed, but it would make sense. He's like not like a throwaway character, but kind of like a side character. So it could kind of make sense that he would be this person that gets infiltrated. But I don't know. And it makes sense too after like this whole big thing we have of Doxson, and we like finally figure out Doxson is okay. Then later we're like, oh, maybe it's actually this person that is in the end of this chapter. So I don't know. That's all I got in these chapters. I just can't wait to keep reading. I'm into this book. I think this is like, sufficiently hooked me now to the point where I want to go take my dog for a walk and go read this book before I go to bed. Very excited to do that. There's just lots going on in this book. And I don't know what to expect. I think my general thoughts on how this book is going to end is this. I think Ellen and Vin are going to go their separate ways. Ellen is going to be the ruler of this dominance. Vin is going to figure out what she's doing. I don't think at the end of this book she's going to really figure out what she's supposed to do. It seems like she's going to just go on a journey on her own through the dominances, trying to figure out who she is. I still think she's going to have an identity crisis at the end of this book, because I don't know if us as readers really know who she is. And maybe she's going to figure that out in one big moment. Maybe she's going to like figure out that she's the queen and she's going to really come into like leadership, but I don't think so. I think I mean, like, Ellen has to come back into power in some way. I just don't know how. I don't know. There's always another secret. I just need to keep turning the pages. All right, that's all I got because I just want to go read. Oh, we did another hour for this one. Shoot, I thought it was going to be like 45 minutes. All right, it doesn't matter. You guys like long videos anyway. So I'm just going to call it here. I'm going to go read. And sometime next week, we'll probably have another one. I don't know if I'm going to publish this now or in the morning. Maybe I'll publish it now. A little midnight sneak peek. I don't know. We'll see. We'll figure it out. All right, guys. Have a good night or a good day or good morning wherever you are. Good afternoon, good evening, and good night. And I'll see you in the next one.